I'm pleased to be joined by Gilbert Bennett, Nalcor Energy's Vice President of the Lower Churchill project, to release the latest in a series of discussion papers entitled Electricity Demand Forecast, Do We Need the Power? Now, this is a very important paper from our perspective, and I think from the perspective of the people of the province, because it deals with the issue of the need for power, which has been a question raised by some critics and concerned others in relation to the project. This report identifies key influences in the demand growth and supports Manitoba Hydro International's discussion on electricity demand forecasts in their report released on October 30th. The way I would describe this, I would describe MHI's report as a technical report which must be read in conjunction with the demand paper, which I would refer to as a practical analysis. Electricity demand on the island, as we've said repeatedly, will exceed supply in the near future. Historical trends, current demands for power, and economic indicators clearly establish that new generation is required in our province. Attached to the demand paper as Appendix 1 is the 2012 provincial load forecast prepared by Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. And it's some interesting numbers there, but one of the most interesting is it establishes that the peak demand on the island in 2012 is 1,581 megawatts. It increases to 1,766 megawatts in 2020 and 1,942 megawatts in 2030. Manitoba Hydro International concluded that the total island energy and peak requirements, this is around pages, I think, 16 to 23 of their report, and I think the comments I'm referring to now are at page 19, conclude that the total island energy and peak requirements are expected to grow at a steady rate over the next 20 years, and the forecasted growth level is very similar to historical growth over the last 40 years. So we need a new source of generation, and this is one of the issues, as we've outlined from the beginning, in terms of Muskrat Falls. Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro's planning load forecast indicates that by 2015, the province will be challenged to reliably meet peak demand, and in the winter months, and post-2019, we will simply not have enough energy to reliably meet demand throughout the year. Electricity demand is strongly linked to economic growth, and since 2002, Newfoundland and Labrador has experienced significant economic growth. As you'll see in the key factors outlined in the demand paper, there's reference to GDP, I think having double, personal disposable income increased by 62%, housing starts by 56 or 58% over the previous decade. So those numbers may not be totally accurate, but they're approximations. And very interestingly, because this is one of the arguments been made, is that although industrial demand has gone down as a result of mill closures, all of that energy is being utilized. The mills in Stephenville and Grand Falls were using a combined energy of approximately 182 megawatts. As of 2011, approximately 40%, or 76 megawatts, had gone into the system, and Valley Inco required 85 megawatts. It's predicted by the end of 2014, all of the energy from the mills will be utilized in the system. So industrial demand has gone down, but residential demand has increased 16%, and commercial demand is up 10%. We have had 28,800 new houses constructed between 2002 and 2011, with 86% of them using electric heat. Since 2006, we've averaged over 3,000 homes a year, with the maximum of 3,600 in 2010. And interesting, and this just to try to put things in perspective, in their report, again, I think it's around page 19, MHI states that 10 megawatts of peak growth can be achieved by adding only 1,565 homes. So this just gives you an example of when we're talking about megawatts and what's required. That's how you can translate it into everyday language. So we've had continued housing starts. Another argument has been, well, there's population decline. But it's somewhat counterintuitive, but we've actually had an increase of 18,600 ratepayers since 2006. So we have more homes, we have less people in the homes, we have bigger homes, we have younger families, and we have more electric space heating. Hydro's latest demand forecast indicates a growth of approximately 1.4% annually, and industrial demand will be led by Valley Inco. It's important to note that the Labrador mine developments are not included in any of the demand forecasts we've outlined here, because until they proceed to firm projects, they can't be included. In their report released last week, MHI validated the methodology and data behind Hydro's electricity demand forecasting process. They found that the residential demand in the 2012 forecast was an improvement over the 2010 forecast. And generally, they found that the forecasting of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro was conservative. So they found it was well-founded and appropriate as an input into the Decision Gate 3 process. 1, do we need the power? Yes. 2, is Muskrat Falls the lowest cost alternative? Definitely. Gilbert?
Thank you, Minister. For more than 40 years, Nalcor subsidiary Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro has been responsible for planning the province's electricity needs. To determine the timing and the amount of future generation sources required, Hydro prepares a long-term load forecast to project the province's anticipated electricity needs and to ensure sufficient generation resources are available to reliably meet the electricity needs of households, businesses, and industries across the province. The utility load forecasting methodology used by Hydro is a well-established approach that has been used within the electric utility industry for many decades. We continually refine our approach in an effort to ensure the preparation of objective and unbiased load forecasts. This statistical-based econometric approach is used to forecast utility energy and peak demand requirements into the future. Preparing a long-term load forecast is the first step in the planning process, as it establishes the anticipated electricity requirement for the island's consumers. In doing this, Hydro analyzes how much electricity has been used in the past and combines this with an assessment of current and expected economic conditions. Hydro approaches load forecasting cautiously and considers its load forecast practices and resulting long-term demand and energy requirements for the island's future to be reasonable. The long-term load forecast, completed in 2012 and used in the Decision Gate 3 analysis, was based on a set of conservative underlying assumptions, including the province's economic forecast, which has moderate growth expectations for the province. As Minister Kennedy just said, MHI validated that the load forecasts prepared for both the Muskrat Falls, or interconnected island option, as well as the isolated island option, were well-founded and appropriate as an input into the Decision Gate 3 process. Once we've determined new generation is required, several years of lead time are needed to design and construct new facilities. Newfoundland and Labrador energy forecasts are showing a shortfall of capacity by 2015 and energy around 2019. Developing Muskrat Falls will change the energy future of Newfoundland and Labrador and move us away from continued dependence on oil and unstable and ultimately higher electricity rates for consumers. Through long-term load forecasting and prudent generation planning, we can ensure we can continue to meet consumers' electricity needs today and long into the future. In summary, our load forecast clearly shows the need for a new source of power for island electricity customers. This has once again been confirmed by MHI, and likewise they confirmed our recommendation that Muskrat Falls and the Labrador Island Transmission Link represent the lowest cost option to meet this need. Thank you.